Tonight. The area around Puerto Vallarta is a virtual war zone, we're told, following the weekend death of one of the world's most ruthless drug kingpins. The Mexican government operation was supported by the U.S. Senior foreign policy correspondent Jillian Turner has details tonight from the State Department.
Apparently, a part of Mexico that folks thought was very safe has, turned the other way.
American tourists in Mexico are facing a second night under State Department shelter-in-place orders for Puerto Vallarta and surrounding areas. This after Mexican security forces took out the leader of the notorious Jalisco Cartel, known as El Mencho.
It is up there with Sinaloa as being one of the deadliest cartels and one of the main producers of fentanyl that traffics onto U.S. streets.
El Mencho's henchmen responded by taking to the streets, killing dozens of people and setting the city ablaze. Stores, gas stations, roadways, all burned.
It was surreal because we're going to the airport and we're dodging burned out cars in the middle of the street.
Flights in and out of the area were grounded.
There's no coming in and out of the city unless you own a vehicle.
Mexico's president is urging calm.
The most important thing at this moment is to guarantee the peace and security of the entire population of all of Mexico.
Meanwhile, Mexican officials are disclosing new details on the operation.
Through military intelligence work, we located a trusted person of one of El Mencho's romantic partners who transported her to a facility in the town of Tapala, Jalisco. At that location, she met with El Mencho.
Mexican officials plan to arrest El Mencho there, but he opened fire and fled to nearby woods where he was later found.
El Mencho came out. They left behind a group with a large quantity of weapons. It really was a very violent attack.
He died from gunshot injuries. The White House says the U.S. played a vital role in the operation. Trump officials, quote, provided intelligence that Mexican officials relied upon.
He promised to stop the flow of fentanyl, secure the border, prosecute and go after the cartels. Part of this is working with our allies like Mexico.
Well, tonight, Aeromexico says the company hopes to resume air operations gradually, but the State Department says Americans in those areas should continue to follow official government guidance and hunker down. They should also call that phone number seen on your screen there. As of tonight, Brett, we do not know of any government evacuation flights planned for Americans there. Brett?
Chaos erupting in Mexico. American tourists at the resort town of Puerto Vallarta are under a shelter-in-place order after the Mexican military killed a cartel kingpin known as El Mencho. The takedown was part of a joint U.S.-Mexico operation, and now cartels are retaliating, wreaking havoc in towns across the country. President Trump has been pushing hard for a crackdown on these deadly narco-terrorists. Jessica, the cartel kingpin, El Mencho, so he's Jewish.
That's related to Jack Hughes, and I saw him at Katz's.
Yes, exactly.
This is cool.
Yeah.
It's scary if you're just in the Guadalajara airport and this is happening if you're on vacation in Puerto Vallarta. But I love to see the cooperation between the U.S. and Mexico and President Sheinbaum. Apparently there was some discussion the U.S., another Jew, there you go, that the U.S. was just going to do this on their own. And she said, let us take care of it. There was intel assistance, but I think it's fantastic. One concern, and I've been thinking about this a lot just as we go through our news cycles. The summer is coming, World Cup. One of the stops is in Guadalajara. There are going to be major security concerns around this event that obviously matters a lot to all of North America to get right.
Maybe Kash Patel should go there, too.
I'm sure he will, and crush some beers. That's it.
Make sure he knows the coach.
So that's your tennis.
Yeah,
Yes.
World Cup.
Emily, you are like the criminal expert here. You're a lawyer. Should Americans hold off from any Mexican vacations like in the next few weeks?
I think that would be wise.
Okay.
I also think that the tourism attraction there and that regular industry that we all participate in, and people like me from California go all the time, it's a really thin veneer. This is not new, and the power vacuum that is currently being exploited and sort of fought over has been happening for decades. We know that there are billions of dollars of this illicit industry, multiple illicit industries that the cartels are engaging in, like human trafficking, drugs, the green gold of avocado farms, like all the things. They've been doing that forever. It just morphs based on how much they make and what policies are in place. That's why right now they're trafficking everything through Canada, who has different drug statistics and tracking mechanisms. My point is, if you take away $1 from a cartel, believe me, they will do anything to take it back. So right now, of course, the immersion is important and the working together. But the reality is that if you think there's a separation between the Mexican government and the cartels, then you are a fool. Not you, I just mean in general.
It's okay, I'm
and
used to it.
Strong allegations of Scheinbaum and Sinaloa. Like, this is so deep and complex.
We get it. You blame the Jews. All right, Emily. Dana, refugio en el lugar, which is Spanish for shelter in place. They're advising tourists to hide under large objects or Ana Navarro. But she's, only if she's in Guadalupe. Whatever's available. Where do you see this going? Good thing?
Well, I
Dangerous.
think the one thing is that we could all say is that doing the same thing over and over again, which was nothing, was going to get you nowhere. And when you decide to take on cartels like this, yeah, there's going to be a reaction. And also there's the feuding of the cartels, like getting the cartels to fight each other is very good. But when you see how violent they are in response to this, it makes you cringe. It makes me cringe thinking about how terrifying it was when President Biden let the cartels just send in all these people.
Take over hotels.
And,
I mean, apartment complexes.
Right, and sending them across in order to hurt us. And now that border is sealed. And so the pressure points on all of these cartels are coming from a lot of different places. I expect President Trump will speak to this tomorrow night in the State of the Union. He said, I was going to take on the cartels. And this guy in particular, El Mencho, he was a big-time fentanyl dealer.
There you go. Awesome, Jesse. These cartels have military-grade weapons, so it's pretty much of a terror network that they're taking down.
Say Puerto Vallarta one more time.
Puerto Vallarta.
I liked it better the second time.
I believe in pronouncing things the way they're intended. Taco. Barrito.
Taco, or as Jill Biden would say,
Ana Navarro.
We should just do a whole show in Espanol.
Yes.
Yo puedo.
That would be like the halftime show with Bad Bunny. All right. What are we talking about here?
I don't know.
All right. So this guy was visiting his mistress and got smoked.
There you
What is the lesson here, Greg?
Infidelity.
Don't cheat on your wife.
Be more discreet.
Oh my God.
No, but this was U.S. intelligence that we gave to the Mexican military. Mexican military. sorry. I'm just kidding. I love the Mexican military.
There's 25 National Guard.
I know. No, there was a very brave operation, but we're doing a lot of intelligence sharing. We have drones overhead. We obviously have sources on the ground. And during these reprisal attacks, which everything looks like they're on fire, if one single American tourist is hurt, I'm going to have to call for a travel ban on Mexico.
Yes.
Just like we destroyed the country of Dominican Republic from one poisoning, we're not afraid to do it to Mexico. And I'd say I mean the president of the United States will launch land attacks into Mexico proper if one single hair on the head of any Mexican
with Trump
tourist.
or Cash?
I'm just talking. I'm just talking.
You should stop.
All right.
So ridiculous.
The U.S. State Department is telling Americans in Mexico to shelter in place as law enforcement tries to regain control of cities that have fallen into chaos in the hands of the Mexican cartels. This is after the Mexican military took out a notorious cartel kingpin with U.S. support. And we're learning a little bit more about our role in all of that. Not a lot of detail, but we had one. The carnage, cars torched, roads blocked, banks and local businesses set on fire as those cartels are now fighting for power. It's like everybody else is in the middle of a gang war right now. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner, here with my co-host Emily Campagno, and also joining us, Tommy Lahren, co-host of The Big Weekend Show and host of Tommy Lahren is Fearless on Outkick. Cheryl Casoni, Fox Business anchor and host of American Dream Home on Fox Business. And Griff Jenkins is with us, co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend. Mexico's most wanted drug lord, known as El Mencho, was killed in a U.S.-backed military raid. He founded a vast criminal network which has the highest cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine trafficking capacity in Mexico. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt applauded the move. And here's what she wrote. El Mencho was a top target for the Mexican and U.S. government as one of the top traffickers of fentanyl. President Trump has been very clear the U.S. will ensure narco-terrorists sending deadly drugs to our homeland are forced to face the wrath of justice they have long deserved. Former Pinal County Sheriff Mark Lamb joined me last hour on the Faulkner Focus.
This is exactly what they're doing in Puerto Vallarta. What they are doing is burning buses, lighting gas stations on fire, because they want to create terror for those who struck a nerve. This will create compression amongst those other cartels. We may see more violence stem from this, but what we're seeing right now is their capability for violence, and this should awake Americans up. This is why it's so important to close our borders.
The borders are essentially closed, and the drugs flowing across, Griff, have dwindled to nearly zero, thank goodness. Not quite there, but certainly the human trafficking. What is there for people on the left to catch on to at this point?
So this is a big deal, Harris, and it couldn't be a more dangerous time to be in Mexico because of what Sheriff Lamb was talking about. So a power vacuum was now created. El Mencho was the top trafficker of cocaine, methamphetamine, fentanyl coming across in the Jalisco New Generation cartel. Now, remember, last summer, El Mayo, who was the leader of the Sinaloa cartel, was taken. The U.S. captured him. It led to a spike in 400% increase in homicides in Mexico. Now we're going to see it even more so because Jalisco New Generation is the dominant cartel. And they're going to start retaliating now against Mexican officials because of this. And don't forget, for 4 years under the Biden administration, they lined their pockets with money. That's why you see these stunning videos of the cartel leaders in armored vehicles that rival U.S. military firepower. They're going to retaliate against the officials, but then they're going to fight the rival factions that are trying to fill El Mencho. And so it's really a lot of unanswered questions of really where and how they're going to retaliate against Mexican officials, and then the war that's going to go on with the cartel, which puts Americans stuck in Mexico at a very, very high risk.
Yeah, the list last night, Tommy, that some of us put out on social media of all the areas that were basically in lockdown, shelter in place, was pretty long. It wasn't just Jalisco and Puerto Vallarta and some of the other areas where we know Americans go, but it was a lot of different states within that country.
I think Americans need to understand something that doesn't feel comfortable, but anytime you as an American travel to Mexico, there is a limited amount of things that the American government can do for you there. Yes, they've put out the warnings. They said shelter in place. They can help you a little bit with the embassy. But when you decide to travel to Mexico, a lot of people think you go to a resort, you're going to be safe, nothing happens there. Well, I think they're finding out the hard way that that's not necessarily true. In 2017, a friend of mine from California was stabbed to death in Playa del Carmen. And that was just walking from bar to bar in a resort area. So I've been sounding the alarm on this for almost 10 years now, saying, if you're an American going to Mexico, have a great time, but understand the risks. And to the point about President Trump and his message, we saw it in the first administration, his message to Mexico was the threat of tariffs if the Mexican military doesn't do their part to secure the border. And then the Mexican military stepped up. Now we flash forward to administration 2.0. President Trump says, I'm not going to tolerate not only the human trafficking, but the drug trafficking. And now the Mexican military, once again, stepping up to do their part to secure their own country. That, in my opinion, is a direct response to President Trump and how tough he's been on this issue.
Talk to me about tariffs, because you knew we'd get there eventually, and Tommy got us there. You've got a new round coming, potentially, that the president and his staff have worked on to get beyond what the U.S. Supreme Court did. It sounds like, from what Tommy's saying, you may need those more immediately, particularly given the situation that's going on
a national security basis, which is the reason that he implemented those tariffs in the first place. Liberation Day, April of 2025. Fast forward to now. The steel and aluminum tariffs, by the way, are still in place. That's a separate issue than what the Supreme Court ruled on. And that is a big piece of it. Those are sectoral. Yes, like and Canada, that's why you've seen more and more auto manufacturing that is coming back into the United States. Again, is this a safety concern? Because before, the parts were going back. They were going from Canada to the U.S. down to Mexico and then back. Sometimes these components were going back and forth to Mexico. A lot of that is ending, and a lot of the automakers had expressed concerns for the safety of their employees in Mexico. The U.S. government has not only do you have this designation of a terrorist organization with Jalisco, but you also have them giving us a price tag on the cartel industry as it exists right now in Mexico. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry on an annual basis because they're not just into fentanyl and into meth and cocaine and human trafficking. They're also, they steal oil from Pemex and then they sell it. They have extortion operations around the country, the different groups of the cartel do, where they extort the avocado farmers. They extort small businesses, nightclubs. It is an unbelievable. So even though the border has been effectively shut down, even though the fentanyl, to your point, production has really slowed down, in particular in the southern part, like in the Sonoran region, we've seen that. Still, this is not exactly a moment in time where the cartels are going to say, oh, we're just going to walk away from the billions of dollars. And by the way, they have crypto trading operations as well. It is so much more than what Americans, I think, understand.
Yeah, you know, Emily, as we look at these pictures from there and all the videos over the weekend, it's terrifying.
It is. Thank you for pointing out, too, the vast enterprise network that the cartels have been engaging in for decades. They are loath to and will not surrender $1 of that multi-billion-dollar illicit revenue that they've been getting for years at all. And they've been exploiting the northern border through our northern neighbors who don't have the same drug trafficking and human trafficking and illicit types of data statistics and tracking that we do here in the States. The green gold of the avocado farms, the oil seizures, those cartels have that entire country and its economics and ecosystem under a tight fist. And I'm worried that the news cycle covers this as Americans are in the danger that they are, but that it will go back to the thin veneer of safety that we've been enjoying as tourists for decades. We know that power vacuums beget violence and exploitation, and that's what's been happening this entire time. That's why there are those multiple factions, because back in the day, it used to just be one. Now Jalisco's on top, right? It didn't used to be like that, but this is what shifts. The last Mexican elections were the bloodiest of all time, and the amount of journalists that have been murdered, the amount of influencers on live streaming, the amount of targeted, what's the word I'm looking for, when the cartels are recruiting young people there. It starts at a very young age. They hold their families hostage. They have now music and you know, pop culture influences for these kids. It is a reign of terror. And to think, by the way, that the government is somehow distinct from the cartels is a very naive and foolish way of thinking. They are deeply embedded, and I'm not quite sure what our next steps are diplomatically, but it requires a very complex and nuanced approach to this country and to those cartels. I think that takes years of investments. This is not just a current administration diplomatic solution.
It's such a great point. I was just playing for Emily in the green room before he came out the narco ballad for Mencho. It's called Soy Mencho. It's like a popular song. They start young and influence it. I would just add to, you know, we don't know what's going to happen next. I think one thing that may help tamp the violence down is that President Sheinbaum has a lot of pressure to get this under control before the FIFA World Cup. Because the Mexican people love soccer. And if this continues, there will be questions about whether you can hold those World Cup matches down there. And so she's got a tight timeline.
On my very short walk from one set to the other, to this one, a few minutes ago, we learned that there were 25 members of the Mexican army that responded and took out El Mencho, excuse me. And that's a high number if you consider that they're going in to get somebody and they take that kind of damage and harm to themselves. So Sheinbaum, I just have a question. They knew that we were going to help them. They knew what the plan was, and still, you've got a situation that is very explosive right now. Can she handle what's going on now across a lot of the country?
Well, in 25 guard members were announced. It was made by the Mexico's Secretary of Security. His name is Omar Garcia Harfuch. He was, El Mencho tried to kill him in 2020, failed. He's now the top Homeland Security person, if you will. So there's a lot of motivation to revenge those 25 guard members that were killed.
May I say, just a plug, you know, if you're interested in this, you want to learn more than we have in this time here, listen to the podcast Borderland with Katarina Schultz. She has been on the ground there covering this for years. I trust her explicitly, and she frankly has been digging up all of those horrific details that make us uncomfortable, but that are so necessary for us to know.
Or what we call the truth.
Yes, ma'am.
Sure. All right, Sandra, let's bring in Robert Almonte, former U.S. Marshal in Western Texas, retired Deputy Chief of the El Paso Police Department, who has extensive experience with the cartels. Robert, thanks for being with us. So El Mencho was the leader of the most powerful cartel in Mexico, even more powerful than the Sinaloa cartel, founder and leader of the Jalisco New Generation, the CGNG. What is going on in Mexico to fill the vacuum that his death leaves?
Yeah, well, this is extremely big news. This is huge news. El Mencho, as you mentioned, was a leader of the New Generation cartel. They are extremely violent, as you mentioned, more violent than the Sinaloa cartel. El Mencho's cartel, extremely violent, ruthless, and barbaric. I'm talking about these guys torturing their victims, cutting their hearts out, and eating the heart. I mean, just incredible stuff. So this was a big deal. This is a big win for Mexico, for the United States, and the entire world.
Right, but what is happening in the power vacuum that has been left by his death? Because we see scenes there in Puerto Vallarta, which is a major American tourist destination, where cars are on fire, running gun battles in the streets have been reported.
Yeah, what we're seeing right now is basically the retaliation on the part of the El Mencho's people. El Mencho's people are extremely loyal to him. They'll die for him, and they have died for him. So they are extremely upset that their leader was killed, and it's payback time now. That's why they're creating chaos. They're disrupting the Mexican, everything that's going on in Mexico, the Mexican government. So that's what we're seeing right now. Now, that should last a while longer than it's going to calm down. What's taking place right now, though, in the meantime, is the discussion of who's going to take over the leadership. And my money's going to be on El Mencho son-in-law, and the cartels like to keep the leadership in the family, and I think El Mencho's wife also may be involved in that. There's some other people that may be possible replacements. However, I think you may see some internal conflict within the cartel if that does happen, and then you'll see more violence. But this is a big deal. It's a big win. United States very involved in providing intelligence to Mexican authorities, but the credit goes to the Mexican authorities for actually taking El Mencho out. So this is great news for a lot of people.
Great news for a lot of people, but not such great news for tourists who are down there in that area, who are suddenly finding themselves under a shelter-in-place order from the State Department. And the State Department shelter-in-place order goes to Puerto Vallarta, Guadalajara, Chapala, Reynosa, Michoacan, Guerrero, Nuevo Leon. I mean, a lot of people are trying to get out of there, Robert, as fast as they can, and they're having a hard time doing it.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, and you've probably heard me say this before, is that I tell people not to go to Mexico. And I think there's even more reason for me to say that, because things have changed now. President Trump has said he's going after the cartel. And I think by us providing information to Mexican authorities on his location and taking him out, you're going to see more of this happen. I do a lot of research, which includes going into Mexico. I have not been going there for that reason, because I really believe that Trump is going to step up the game. He's going to go after the cartel with or without the cooperation of the Mexican government.
Yeah.
And I certainly won't want to be stuck in Mexico when something like that happens.
All right, so real quick, we're coming into the end of February, beginning of March. Tens of thousands of Americans are going to be heading to Mexico on spring break. What's your advice to them?
Don't go to Mexico. I'm serious about that. It's a different time. It's a different world now. And then you're going to see an increase of the cartels fighting each other for control of the drug trafficking routes and everything else that's involved, tapping the pipelines, stealing truckloads of avocados, kidnappings, extortion, everything that the cartels are involved in. My advice is don't go to Mexico for a while, because I think you're going to see more of this, and I think we're going to see this in the near future.
All right, stay here in the United States or go somewhere else a little safer. Robert, thanks for the update. Really appreciate you coming on, sir.
Thank you.
Get some analysis inside Dan Brunner's, former FBI special agent. Dan, good morning to you. Thank you for your time. You're hearing that numerous things are happening right now in Mexico. Tell us what you've learned.
Well, I'm talking to a lot of people, a lot of my sources on the ground in Mexico, and it's essentially pure chaos. As you can see from the images there's burning, there's rioting, there's attacks. I mean, it is all-out warfare in certain parts of Mexico, and it's quite concerning. And in certain cities, there's zero public transportation. CJNG and all the affiliates have threatened all bus drivers and all taxi drivers that if they're moving their vehicles around, they will be shot and killed. There's videos out there of taxis being overtaken and just open warfare on the streets. So it's extremely concerning that we're seeing this. And this is what it is right on the brink of possible civil war, because there are so many different factions under CJNG. CJNG isn't necessarily just a group. It is more of an umbrella of a conglomerate of numerous smaller cartels. Now, each one of these cartels, with El Mencho being taken out, all these leaders of these smaller cartels are all going to try and vie for that top dog spot, and they're going to fight and they're going to utilize all their weapons. And your previous guest has said it. This was a small army, and each of these have weapons grade, battlefield weaponry, straight from Ukraine training. So it's quite concerning.
Wow. I read that he was protected by soldiers who carried RPGs. Not soldiers, really, but the men who protected him. El Chapo was 9 or 10 years ago, arrested in 2016, brought to New York City in 2017. Here's what the president of Mexico said. She said, there is absolute coordination with the governments of all states. We must remain informed and calm. We work every day for peace, security, justice, and the well-being of Mexico. Just based on what Jillian's reporting, what service could we have provided the Mexican military?
It's excellent because I directly worked in operations like this while I was with Joint Task Force Vulcan and chasing MS-13 members in Mexico. So I know very directly firsthand of providing intelligence to the Mexican authorities and letting them conduct the event, the attack. And this was absolutely, pinpoint right on there. And U.S. intelligence providing, whether it be source intelligence or signals intelligence, and providing them all the information, the targeting data, locations, letting them execute the operation, because that's important, letting the Mexican authorities execute the operation. And here you can see this. And from what you hear, El Mencho was put on a helicopter and died en route. So which means that they successfully were able to extract him somewhat alive but wounded, and he died en route. So it's an overall excellent operation by Mexican authorities. It's supported by U.S. intelligence services, whether it be DOD or FBI resources, which are embedded there in Mexican.
Let me share this with our viewers. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel, referred to as New Gen, I do believe, right? U.S. designated foreign terrorist organization, 15 to 20,000 members. That's a lot. Believed to take in billions of dollars. Key supplier of fentanyl to the U.S. Considered one of the more significant threats to U.S. health, safety, and security. There are 37 cartel leaders, and you were just describing how the worst case scenario could be happening for Mexico. Why would you say that? And can you answer the question, what happens next?
Well, what happens next is really crucial, and it's going to be, we're going to see in the next few days. So each one of these smaller cartel members are not only going to want to vie for that top dog spot, but also what's concerning is that, intel suggests that a lot of these are going to want to get weapons, more weapons to prepare for more battle amongst their own cartels, amongst their fellow cartels, and a small civil war amongst them. And unfortunately, the Mexican people will be caught in the crossfire, which means that there could be an uptick in drug trafficking coming north to be able to, support these battles, for them to purchase weapons, additional weaponry, additional drones, for them to fight them. So it is definitely concerning.
All right, just one thing I would add. A lot of Americans go to Puerto Vallarta in the area of Jalisco. They may be watching us right now from their hotels. About 30 minutes ago, the president of Mexico said flights could continue later today on Monday into Tuesday. So we hope that is the schedule if they need to get out. Dan, thanks for your time. Appreciate the insight. Thank you.
My pleasure.
We are back with a Fox News alert. Chaos underway in Mexico as the resort town of Puerto Vallarta, as well as a local airport, under siege following a military operation that killed the country's most wanted drug leader. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirming U.S. involvement, writing on X, quote, "The United States provided intelligence support to the Mexican government in order to assist with an operation in Talpalpa, Jalisco, Mexico, in which Nemesio El Mencho Oseguera Cervantes, an infamous drug lord and leader with the Jalisco New Generation cartel, was eliminated." Former El Paso U.S. Marshal Robert Almonte joins me now. And Robert, in the war against the cartels, how big of a deal was it that the Mexican forces killed El Mencho?
This is a huge deal. I mean, I cannot overstate that. This is a huge deal. El Mencho was a leader of the New Generation cartel. They're an extremely violent and barbaric cartel responsible for many murders, not only in Mexico, but in the United States, and responsible for bringing tremendous amounts of methamphetamine, cocaine, fentanyl, heroin into the United States. So this is a big deal. This is a big win for Mexico and for the United States and for the entire world. So The United States was involved in providing intelligence to locate him, but the credit really goes to Mexican authorities for actually taking him out.
And it was a military operation, and I dare I say the response was pseudo-military by the cartels. Why was their response to inflict damage, violence, mayhem on a resort town, Robert?
Well, this is retaliation by El Mencho's people. El Mencho's people are extremely loyal to him. I mean, they will die for him, and they have died for him. So this is all retaliation on part of El Mencho's people. They're very upset. They're retaliating. I think we're going to see this for a while, and then what we're going to see is a change in leadership take place. And right now, my money is going to be on El Mencho's son-in-law, Juan Carlos Valencia, taking over the cartel. However, there are other members of the cartel that may want to take leadership. And if that happens, then we may see continued violence because of the internal conflict. But right now, what we're seeing is retaliation by El Mencho's people. They're extremely upset that he was killed.
You know this is a dangerous situation when the State Department literally issues a shelter-in-place order immediately to the several Americans stranded due to the cartel violence there in Mexico. And the images that came out yesterday were absolutely terrifying, the people actually sheltering in place. But look ahead for us, Robert. Could this all be part of a broader U.S.-led operation, whether in concert with Mexican authorities or on our own, to officially take out the cartels once and for all?
Yeah, I believe that's what we're seeing. I've been saying that for a while. I think President Trump and his administration mean business with or without the assistance of the Mexican government. And I think regardless of who takes over the New Generation cartel, it's extremely important that we keep the pressure on that cartel and take out the new leadership. It's a very dangerous situation in Mexico. The Mexican cartels are running Mexico, so we need to do everything we can to eliminate the cartels, and I think we're gonna see further proof of this in the near future.
Robert Almonte, thank you so much for your time and your insight. Appreciate it.
So, Fox News alert, Americans in Mexico have been given the shelter-in-place order as the country descends into violence following the killing of the notorious cartel boss El Mencho by Mexican forces. The White House confirming that the U.S. provided key intelligence to this operation. Former acting DEA Administrator Derek Moss is warning Americans in the region are at great risk, and he joins us now. Derek, it's good to see you, my friend. Explain to the audience who aren't familiar with him who El Mencho is.
So, LJ, thanks for having me. It's a great day for Americans. Yesterday, the hockey goal, the end of El Mencho, the leader of the Jalisco New Generation cartel, the most wanted man in the Western Hemisphere, is now dead. And that's because we have strong leadership in our country, and the Mexican government has stepped up their game. El Mencho's been flooding the country with deadly drugs for many years. If you look behind me, you'll see all the dead Americans, the dead children over my shoulder, and they're working with the Chinese criminal networks. He's a huge national security threat, and I'm very pleased with the efforts both in America and in Mexico, right? So you have cartel operatives all over America that were led into this country with the wide open border, and they've been here trying to, get our kids and our young Americans these dangerous drugs. So I'm very, very pleased with the efforts, LJ.
So the president's action has caused a massive revenue shift for the cartels. They have three operations. It is people crossing the border and they pay a fee to the cartel. The drugs crossing the border, that's more money, and then the human trafficking. The White House shut that down. Now, there are still some Americans that are traveling to Mexico. Is that safe, Derek?
Well, let me just go back to one thing to make it clear. President Trump, before he got elected, said placing the safety and security of Americans would be the top priority, and he's a man of action. So to answer your question about the Americans, no, it's very dangerous in Mexico. It's been dangerous there for many years. Right now, this is a wake-up call for the world about the treachery of the Mexican cartels. That's why President Trump declared them as terrorists. Would the Americans want to go visit, the middle of Al-Qaeda Central, right? So right now, what we're witnessing, especially on social media, it highlights the level of control and power the cartels have in Mexico. They're blowing up buses. They're shutting down roads. There's blockades in up to 20 states. They're burning buildings, right? So, yeah, it's very dangerous in there. LJ, I feel confident, though, with our State Department professionalism, with the warnings, the communication is going out all over the social media. I think that they're going to be fine. It's just isolated, it appears. I've gotten some reporting that it's kind of like leveled off a little bit. I hope that's true. But, you know, again, you can't go into the middle of an area where terrorists are. It's not safe in certain areas. So, you know, there's gunfire, there's panic in the streets. They were running on to the airport tarmac yesterday. So let's hope and let's pray that the people can get out of there and get home. And so, you know, it's just very dangerous. But let's not downplay the Americans that are in danger today, because we had millions of unknown people coming into this country, ghost criminals all over this place. So we have a big issue. We got to continue to fight hard.
There's a lot of heat going on when it comes to these narco terrorists. So any region that is a central location for these terrorists, Americans should be on high alert. We're not trying to make people fearful, but this is exactly what's happening there. They should take your warning, heed that warning. Thanks, Derek. I got to run, brother.
LJ, one last thing. Just watch the videos on social media and you'll see how dangerous it is.
That's exactly right. Thanks, Derek.
Senator, I imagine you could hear that in your earpiece, that conversation. That's an American in Mexico. What would you say to that and many, many, many other Americans?
Well, we're in communication with the State Department to try to make sure we can get our people back safely, but it's no secret that Mexico has long been controlled by the cartels and corruption that is facilitated by the government. So many of the government officials who've been compromised there. And of course, they've gotten rich and continue to get rich because of the drugs, because of the human trafficking, the theft of fuel, seafood, you name it. They'll do anything for a buck. And these are dangerous and very violent people. You know, under President Trump, we're now leaning forward into this problem. It's not going to go away. It's going to get worse. But fortunately, President Trump has gotten President Sheinbaum to extradite, I think, approximately 50 different cartel members to the United States. And I'm glad to see him taking the fight to the cartels in Mexico using U.S. facilitated intelligence.
Senator, I have a couple of different things I look forward to talking to you about here while we're together today. I just put a follow-up on this. Let's presume for a moment some of these Americans in Mexico have access to Fox News or their family members are at home. What should they know about the safety of their family members?
Well, they should take the direction from the embassy and the State Department to stay sheltered in place. Don't take any chances. And hopefully we'll get the flights restored here pretty soon. And I'm sure we'll find a way for them to come back to this country safely. But that would be my best advice.
Okay, and then, Senator, I want to follow up on this note that was in that report as well. U.S. intel helped Mexican authorities pull off this against the head of the CJNG. What is the United States position right now? Are we helping Mexico fight this war? Are we active participants in this war on cartels? If so, do we go all in? Are we just behind the scenes? What are we doing about cartels in Mexico?
Well, we, under President Trump, have leaned into providing surveillance, ISR, to the Mexican elite forces. And now the Senate of Mexico has agreed to allow some of our special forces to go in and train theirs. They are very particular about their sovereignty, and I get that. But if they're not able to take care of the problem and it's spilling over to the United States and killing American citizens, it's our problem. And we need to do something about it. And fortunately, President Trump is willing to take this fight to those cartels.
All right, a couple of questions for you on your Senate race. Senator Cornyn, everyone watching and everyone in the audience should know that this week we'll be talking to all of the different candidates in this race. I should say all of the different candidates. No yet accepted invitation from Jasmine Crockett or James Tallarico. But Ken Paxton and Wesley Hunt and Senator Cornyn will all be with us this week. It's a very competitive race. Senator Cornyn, polls have, they're all over the place. Most of them do have Attorney General Paxton in the lead. What do you say right now to Texans about the state of this race?
Well, has been and will be a very competitive race. I don't expect the congressman to make it past March the 3rd, and then there'll be a 10-week runoff between me and the Attorney General.
Unfortunately, the Attorney General's got so much baggage and corruption in his wake that he will jeopardize our chances of keeping this seat red in November. I believe that I can help President Trump in his end of his second term by not only winning this race, but bringing along some of these congressmen who are running in these 5 new congressional seats. Ken Paxton jeopardizes all of that, will potentially lose a race and take other people with him.
Senator Cornyn, so what you're saying to me is Jasmine Crockett or James Tallarico would have a real chance to win as senator from Texas?
Absolutely. We haven't elected a Democrat since 1994, as you know, Will. And but this would be the first crack in the red wall. And unfortunately, that's what is being put at risk as a result of the corruption and the baggage that Ken Paxton brings to this race.
What do you think of Tallarico? He's the rising star getting all this attention. I think most of it manufactured after The Late Show. What do you think of James Tallarico?
He's Beto O'Rourke 2.0. He's pretty slick and with media and obviously drawing crowds. He's offering change. He's a strange guy who quotes the Bible for support of abortion rights and says that God is not binary. I mean, this is not the sort of talk, as you know, that's going to attract mainstream Texans in November.
I do want to ask you about one last thing, Senator Cornyn, and that is a subject that we've talked about here on the show as recently as last week. We talked about H-1B visas, which we've talked about a lot. We've talked about a large and growing Indian population, specifically in DFW. They're 70% of the recipients of H-1Bs. We've begun to investigate on our show how much of this usage is legitimate, if it is all legitimate. Last week, you tweeted out the Indian Century, which I think was a podcaster article from the New York Times. You since deleted it. I think it got a lot of heat online. And I just want to give you the floor. I want to ask you, why did you tweet that out? What did you mean by putting that out, the Indian Century?
Well, India has become an important partner to the United States and a counterweight to China, and that's what that article was about. But H-1B visa fraud and abuse is real, and we need to continue to investigate it to make sure that only legal uses of the H-1B visa are possible. Obviously, we hire Americans first for every job. But if Americans aren't available for the jobs, then we do have a legal way for people to come on a temporary basis and to work in the United States. But I believe that it should not be subject to abuse and fraud. And I'm all in when it comes to making sure that it's used only for legal and appropriate purposes.
Okay. Senator John Cornyn, thanks for being with us.
This is a Fox News alert. We're continuing to monitor the situation unfolding in Mexico, where the U.S. Embassy has put out a security alert for all American citizens to shelter in place. This comes amid reports of violence erupting in the state of Jalisco. Tourists at a resort in the city of Puerto Vallarta were told not to leave the resort, while photos and videos shared with Fox News Digital capture billowing dark smoke clouding the skyline of the city. This frightening situation occurs after Mexican security forces say they killed one of the most notorious drug cartel leaders in their country, El Mencho, head of the Jalisco New Generation cartel. All right, so this comes not just in a vacuum. It comes in context of President Trump declaring the cartels foreign terrorist organizations and then taking out Maduro. Would Mexico be doing this if it hadn't been for the pressure President Trump is putting on them?
I don't believe so. I mean, I don't know the domestic politics of Mexico in depth. I know that Mexico has, every leader we've seen in Mexico has tried to find some way to, I guess, live with these cartels, maybe out of fear, maybe out of being corrupt in bed with them. I'm not sure. But I think President Trump's made it clear that we're not going to stand for it. And they're just a little bit, listen, if Democrats want us to have an open border, we can just jump across that border going in the other direction and take care of some of these folks. And so that's been the, rather than letting the cartels in, we're going to push the door, make it open the other way and send some folks in down there. It's kind of been the threat with President Trump in this administration. We did see what happened in Venezuela, and I don't think Mexico is far off from that. I don't think we're going to try to overthrow the government, but these cartels aren't waging war These cartels are waging war on us, not just Mexico. And for that reason, we have every right in the world to have an interest in them going away. And it seems like Mexico maybe feels empowered, maybe supported. I'm not sure what we're doing is in the shadows, but it looks like they're taking steps to correct that.
Yeah, I like that idea of open borders work both ways. That's very, very cool. Look, I forgot his name. He's
Mencho.
El Mencho, that's right. Convicted in 1994, spent 3 years in prison in the U.S. and was released. And he goes back and he's like flooding the country with fentanyl. Tommy, what's going on here? Where we have these people in jail, and we release them, and then they go back and with terrorists, they kill Americans. With drug cartel leaders, they go back and poison Americans. Why are we?
We've got repeat offenders on the street of every major American city, right? This feels like a running narrative. We got to end it. I think President Trump has mentioned more than once that he is more than happy to assist with President Sheinbaum, if she so desires, in dealing with their cartel problem. Now, up until now, I don't think that she's necessarily given him the green light to do so. Maybe what's going on right now will change that. I certainly hope so. But I will also say this, just to the point on the Americans that are in Mexico being asked to shelter in place at their resorts. I can't imagine how terrifying that is right now because of what's going on. And we're seeing images all over social media. I mean, it looks like a war zone because it probably is. I would also just say this. I had a friend of mine who was murdered in Mexico in Playa del Carmen about 6 or 7 years ago, just down there on a bachelor trip or a birthday vacation, murdered in the streets and left there. Mexico, in a lot of places, is not safe for Americans. And I know a lot of Americans think if they're in a resort that everything is fine, nothing can possibly get to them there. Joey and I were talking off camera. Hey, listen, there are a lot of beautiful places in the United States of America that are warm and sunny, Florida being one of them, a heck of a lot safer. So perhaps Americans should consider that, especially with what's going on right now.
And the former Dutch West Indies, which are now the U.S. Virgin Islands.
There you go.
Them from the Dutch. So, Molly, just look at the record. President Trump, he got Soleimani. He got the Abbey Gate bomber. He got the Benghazi terrorists. He got Maduro. And now, through pressure on the Mexican government, he got El Mencho. That's a heck of a record. If I was the Ayatollah Khamenei, would I be a little bit nervous?
Yeah, there was a $15 million bounty on El Mencho. So he's been out there among the most wanted men involved in these cartel activities for quite a long time. And of course, the great credit goes to the Mexican military here as well. And actually, as we're talking about Claudia Sheinbaum, the President Jillian Turner, our State Department anchor and reporter, just flagged that she put out a statement talking about how this did result in various blockades and other reactions, and also offering praise to the Mexican Army, the National Guard, the armed forces, which brings me back to what you brought up at the very beginning, Mark, where you talked about the pressure that President Trump, at the very beginning of this new second administration, put on not just Mexico, but on Canada in redefining what these cartels mean broadly, that they're terrorist organizations, and kind of drawing and putting this pressure on through tariffs to a certain extent, which makes it interesting and perhaps notable in the Supreme Court's most recent decision. So we'll be seeing how this continues and how the pressure continues on these states. But as you mentioned, there have been these big successes, including reining in the fentanyl trade and reducing deaths here in America. So this perhaps is just one more part of that, and we'll see what's and obviously beyond that, a very dangerous situation still unfolding. A lot of Americans in precarious situations right at this moment.
We'll have more on the breaking news out of Mexico. The U.S. Embassy issuing a shelter-in-place order for Americans in areas around Mexico City and the resort town of Puerto Vallarta after the Mexican Army says it killed a prominent cartel kingpin known as El Mencho. You're looking at some of the response, apparently, of the cartel members who have been torching vehicles and even airplanes in the Guadalajara area. Let's bring in Lucas Tomlinson from the White House. Lucas.
Well, good afternoon, John. So far, there's been no reaction from the White House about the series of ongoing gun battles that we are witnessing in Mexico after, as you mentioned, the drug kingpin and cartel leader El Mencho was killed by Mexican forces. We've heard from the Pentagon that the Joint Interagency Task Force Counter Cartel did assist Mexican forces, not likely with boots on the ground, John, but with intelligence sharing. But after El Mencho has been killed, we've seen a series of warfare, frankly, going on across Mexico. In Puerto Vallarta, in Guadalajara, we saw images from the airport. And of course, thousands of American tourists visit Mexico throughout the year. Certainly, during the winter months in the United States. And right now, the State Department is warning all Americans in Mexico to shelter in place, particularly in Puerto Vallarta and the Guadalajara area. But after El Mencho is killed, we're seeing rival cartels engaging in gun battles throughout the day. We're seeing videos of Mexican special forces engaging in Mexican police on the streets. We're seeing a lot of iPhone video, as you can see here on the screen, some of the aftermath, buses destroyed, airports being targeted, and really a lot of chaos throughout multiple states across Mexico, John.
Yeah, I've seen a jetliner on fire sent by one of my aviation buddies. It's a serious situation. The president has warned that the cartels, are essentially foreign terrorist organizations, and he's talked about potentially sending U.S. forces after them. Doesn't sound like that is happening yet, Lucas.
It hasn't happened yet, but many U.S. special operators have been active along the Mexico-U.S. border, John. And of course, when President Trump came back to office, obviously securing that southern border was a top priority for the president. In fact, something you'll probably hear Tuesday night in the State of the Union about how the border has been locked down. We're not getting illegal aliens coming into the United States. That's something the president has touted many times. But the situation in Mexico is very volatile, as we're reminded of today. You have rival cartel leaders, men who possess billions of dollars. They're engaged in the drug trade, a drug trade that is still active, very flourishing. And they are getting some assistance from the U.S. military in terms of intelligence sharing. And President Trump himself has threatened drone strikes in Mexico. Remember, going back to his first term with Mark Esper, in his memoir, Mark Esper said he was horrified to hear President Trump talk about potentially launching drone strikes into Mexico. Remember, after the Maduro raid, there were some warnings from the White House that if Mexico doesn't get their act together dealing with these cartels, not necessarily something like what happened to Maduro and his wife would be next, but there was a warning, need you, Claudia Sheinbaum, the leader of Mexico, to do more against these drug cartels, and perhaps she was listening, and that was the result of today, John.
Yeah, well, those are horrific images of the burned out buses and other attacks that the cartels have been initiating there just to blow off some steam, and they're taking innocent civilians in the process.
Yeah, turf war.
Yeah, let's hope we do not see that kind of thing in this country. Lucas Tomlinson, thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.